Andrew Cuomo is attempting to make a comeback. He wants to be mayor of New York City. Let's remember what he was like. He was aggressive and outspoken. Here he is with a reporter during a COVID briefing when he was governor.
Let's try not to be obnoxious. What are you talking about? We did it already. That's the law. Follow the facts.
Let's not forget either. He resigned in disgrace due to multiple allegations of sexual harassment. But he's back. We talked to his critics and his supporters on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And the Devlin Inn and Suites, Lake Placid, welcoming families, athletes, and groups to the Olympic Village, offering Adirondack mountain views and dog-friendly accommodations. TheDevlinNY.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, April 9th. First up, organizations in the North Country are sounding the alarm about the potential impact of cuts to the Institute of Museum and Library Services. The federal agency provides funding and support to local libraries and museums across the North Country and the nation. Kara Chapman has more.
In mid-March, President Donald Trump ordered several agencies to downsize to, quote, the minimum presence and function required by law. The Institute of Museum and Library Services, known as IMLS, was among them. At the end of March, the agency's entire staff of more than 70 employees was put on leave. Angela Newman says that news came as a surprise.
Presumably there would still be statutory functions that would need to be carried out by staff. So putting all of the staff on administrative leave seemed like a bit of a contradiction to that.
Newman is the continuing education coordinator for the North Country Library System. It supports more than 60 libraries in Jefferson, Lewis, Oswego, and St. Lawrence counties. Newman says North Country libraries won't close or see their budgets affected by any changes to IMLS or its funding.
What they will feel is a delay in that administrative support from the library system, from the state library.
The New York State Library gets about $8 million from IMLS. That supports 55 employees who provide support and oversight for thousands of libraries across the state. Part of the state library's job is to administer state funding for things like construction projects. Newman says if the state library takes a hit from IMLS cuts, that could delay the distribution of funding that local libraries need.
It's a crack in the foundation. People are not necessarily going to see it, but it is affecting the stability of the entire structure.
That's not how the Trump administration is framing things. An official told Politico the cuts, quote, will strengthen IMLS's ability to serve the American people with integrity and purpose. All this isn't just a concern for local libraries. IMLS grants support museums across the North Country, too. Jerry Favreau is president of the Clinton County Historical Association, which has a museum in Plattsburgh.
The impact up here is really huge, and it's rural, and we need our museums and we need our libraries to give the public another way to learn about their history or learn about the rest of the world.
Over the last couple years, IMLS awarded hundreds of thousands of dollars to historic Saranac Lake, Fort Ticonderoga, and the Adirondack Experience in Blue Mountain Lake. Favreau says other policy shifts by President Trump are also worrying museums. One of her association's grants was caught up in a temporary funding freeze earlier this year, and Trump's tariffs could raise prices on supplies the museum needs. Favreau says she's also concerned about how a decrease in Canadian visitors, believed to be largely driven by opposition to the tariffs, could affect Clinton County's sales tax revenues.
We get some funding from the county, and that comes from sales tax. And if a Canadian visitor is not coming here, and the county has to look at their bottom line, will they continue to fund us or will they cut our funding? We don't know. We're hoping that they won't have to, but we don't know. It's those unknowns that are really hard.
As for IMLS, the federal library agency, what remains to be seen is how it'll be restructured. IMLS and its funding were reauthorized through the current fiscal year by a law signed by Trump back in 2018. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York has signed on to a bipartisan letter calling on the administration to follow through on that. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.
So, Andrew Cuomo is back. Now, even though he's running for mayor of New York City, and that's all the way down there, The mayor's presence is felt across New York. So what do people make of a return to politics that seemed almost impossible just a couple years ago? Jung-Yoon Han from the New York Public News Network reports.
There is no New York rivalry quite like the one between former Governor Andrew Cuomo and former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. They fought over everything: who had the power to shut down the city during the pandemic, who had control over the city subways, how to fund de Blasio's idea to provide universal pre-K in the city. Here's what de Blasio said about Cuomo back in 2015, speaking to Spectrum News New York One.
What we've often seen is if someone disagrees with him openly, some kind of revenge or vendetta follows.
De Blasio's statement resonated with many municipal leaders who complained that Cuomo would Bigfoot them on local issues. Some leaders thought that dynamic would become part of the past when Cuomo resigned in 2021 amid scandals over nursing centers during the pandemic and sexual harassment allegations. But now, Cuomo is trying to make a comeback by running for, of all things, de Blasio's old job. Stephanie Miner was mayor of Syracuse when Cuomo took office in 2011. She says his behavior then and now is much like how she sees President Donald Trump's.
He is a bully and yells and screams and mischaracterizes information.
Miner says her relationship with Cuomo turned south when she wrote an op-ed opposing the governor's pension plan in 2013. At the time, her city was set to receive infrastructure funding through the state, but she says the administration ended up withholding it in retaliation.
And I was told that the governor had said that Syracuse will never get that money as long as Stephanie Miner is mayor. And we did not. And shortly after I left office, that money was released to my successor.
Ultimately, she says, Cuomo did not come through on his promises. Case in point, the Buffalo Billion. Cuomo announced the initiative to inject $1 billion into Buffalo's economy in 2012, but an audit from the state comptroller in 2020 found the project failed to deliver on jobs and economic growth. Bob Duffy, who was Cuomo's lieutenant governor during the initial Buffalo Billion rollout, says overall, the governor's initiatives did benefit local communities. Duffy points to Cuomo's regional economic development councils, which they established to help fund local projects.
The governor and his team in the state would, without fail, fund, at least 1, 2, or 3 of each of the region's priority projects every year.
Cuomo supporters also say his initial handling of the COVID pandemic is proof of his competency. But leaders on the local level say his leadership was chaotic and lacked transparency, which led to only more confusion. Rensselaer County Executive Steve McLaughlin says during daily COVID briefings, Cuomo would make executive orders without notice.
Nobody knew what was going to happen until it happened. So at the county level, we're shaking our heads going, you got to be kidding me.
Setting the pandemic aside, for Stephen Aquario, who's the executive director of the New York State Association of Counties, he sees Cuomo's behavior differently.
He always was curious about local government and how the state could and should work with them.
Aquario describes Cuomo as a strong-headed leader who's, sure, opinionated, but not someone who's a bully.
To work in this space, you got to deal with strong personalities who are under tremendous pressure and with tremendous responsibility.
As for McLaughlin, he's not surprised Cuomo is now running for mayor.
I find that pretty ironic that this is the same guy that looked down on us, wouldn't communicate with us, that now he wants to be one of us.
In a statement, Cuomo spokesperson Rich Azzopardi wrote that the former governor has a proven track record of serving New Yorkers and called the criticisms against Cuomo, quote, revisionist history. In Albany, I'm Jung-Yoon Han for the New York Public News Network.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Christopher Watts of Canton and Evan Veenstra of Gananoque, Ontario. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.